Well, thank you for having us. My name is Ray Niles. Actually, a very good friend of mine growing up used to call me Rame with an M. So it's nice to meet a Rain. It's very similar to my best friend growing up used to call me. But I'm one of the co-authors with Kyle of this report that you can see here, Substeading. We'll probably turn off the share.
Sure, yeah, I'm going to share it.
And but so my background is I'm not a transportation executive. My background is on Wall Street. I worked in investment banking as a stock analyst and an investor. And I wrote a report where an aspect of this, it can come back in Q&A, but where I talked about an aspect of this, but applied just more narrowly to the electric utility and natural gas industries. And in this report, Kyle and I are, talking about it on a much bigger level for the transportation industry. But what is substeading? So substeading is it's a legal technology. So that's one way we talk about it. It's a legal technology. What we're proposing is new legislation, a Substead Act, which would legalize the development of the underground subsurface, the unused underground subsurface, which right now is just a commons. It's not used by anyone. The idea behind it is modeled after the Homestead Act. And I don't know if many of you remember from your history classes, the Homestead Act, but it was passed in the early 1860s. And it was passed at a time when most of the Western plains, the Midwestern plains, was just a commons held in trust by the federal government. Really, no one owned it. Of course, you can leave aside the issue of the American Indians. But apart from that, it wasn't really used by anyone. And the government wanted to promote the development of the Midwest and what ultimately became very successful, where every bit of it was turned into farms. Well, the way that happened was under the Homestead Act, a person could make an application to the government and then make a claim on a plot of land, and it would become theirs if they put it to productive use. So the technical details don't matter that much, but I think it was if you agreed to farm it for a certain number of years, you've got to keep, say, 160 acres, and then you got legal title to it, which meant you could do what you want with the land. You could sell it, you could lease it, you could sell your farm products from the land at any price that you chose. The government wasn't going to tell you what to do once it gave you legal title to the land. And it was super successful as a motivator because by getting legal title, you had the profit motive, the incentive of ownership to make the best use of the land. If the market would call for farming corn, you would farm corn. But if more people there's more of a demand for wheat, you would farm wheat. Well, we have the same idea for going underground. And actually, Kyle coined the term, taking homesteading, he coined the term substeading, which is homesteading underground. And the idea is that under the law, if someone would propose say a transportation project, and Kyle's going to go into explaining some of the sample projects in our report, but it could be a new subway line, a new railroad extension, or a new utility infrastructure.
A new experimental technology of anything, like think like Alfred Beach, that type of a thing, and a pneumatic tube system, or freight, any kind of thing like that.
That's right, and anything at all. And really, it's up to the person who wants to develop it, and then they would, if they meet a certain pro forma requirement to actually make their project a reality, like the old homesteaders actually had to farm the land. They couldn't just declare their intention to do it, but say within 5 years, they actually build out the project, then it becomes their property. And they're developing it at their expense. They would charge rates, whatever rates they wanted, market rates. And the advantage of this is that it's their capital, right? It's their capital. They get rewarded through the profits they make from the project. But when we think about this, like, the way infrastructure projects are developed today, not a nickel of taxpayer money is required by doing it. You know, in other words, it'd be developed as of right. So that's the basic concept with substeading. And just two other things I would just mention about it is because it's market developed, the developer has the incentive to develop projects that would create the greatest benefit for the greatest number of people. You know, if they built, say, a new subway line in the middle of nowhere that no one used, they're not going to make any money from it because no one's going to ride it. It's going to go bankrupt. You know, it's sort of like, you know, like they need to think of themselves as, how do I create a mass market for the transportation system that I'm developing, whether it's a newer, you know, an existing technology. That's how they can make the most money. So that's a very big positive. It takes that politicized decision-making for transportation projects away from deciding what kind of transportation projects get developed. They would also have the incentive to make it at the lowest possible cost, because that's how they would make the most money. So the whole issue of, you know, maybe with a government entity spending, you know, too much money developing a project, that would go away. And then, you know, another benefit is that by going, in this particular case, I think the concept could be applied above ground, but we're not talking about that in this report. But by going underground, you get rid of NIMBY objections, right? It's underground, it's out of sight, and you get rid of environmental opposition because it's underground.
Yeah, it makes it much simpler to do, I think.
You're done, baby?
So, so that those sort of the basic.
Sorry, what?
Oh,
Okay.
someone should be muted. That's the basic overview of the concept, which is sort of my half of the presentation. Now I'm going to swing it over to Kyle.